and Derek tells me what sort of benchmarks we need to hit along the way in the next few months to get me to where I want to be in June at my first Ironman.
Uh-huh. So you just made a quick mention there of June at your first Ironman. We all know traditionally Hillary probably starts in either January in Wanaka or March in China. So Derek's brought on a few changes.
Yeah,
elaborate on that.
Some big changes,
Yeah.
and to be fair, I went to Derek completely willing to start over, and for whatever reason, be it because I'm 32 now or whatever, the fun old sort of philosophy that used to really work for me, which was kind of the more I smashed myself in training, the more I raced, the better I did. There was a very direct correlation. It was really simple. I think it was more than apparent to myself and everyone else out there that is not working for me anymore.
Uh-huh.
So I went to Derek saying, okay, I'm going to be a blank slate and I will do what you want. And I was perfectly willing to cut back my racing schedule this year because what Derek and I have agreed upon is that I'm not going to show up to the start line of an Ironman unless we feel like I have a very legitimate chance at ending up on the podium. And so we're in the business of top threes this year, and to that extent, I'm going to race 3 Ironmans. And
that's like a 65% cut.
It is. And it's going to take a lot of self-restraint, especially over the next several months, because we are going to wait until Coeur d'Alene do my first Ironman, because he has a major sort of rebuilding project to do with me, and it's going to take some time, and I'm willing to invest that time because I know that I need to take things to the next level, and it's the time to do it.
I think that shows a lot of faith too in your coach to change your philosophy completely upside. You're going to take up knitting? You have a lot of time on your hands.
I think I'm going to have time to coach a few more athletes myself, which is cool because I love coaching athletes, and my time for that has been very limited, and my number of athletes has been very limited, but I think that I am going to have more time, and thus more time for other little projects like that I love, but there never seems to be enough hours in the day.
Cool. So what we were talking about earlier, you said you absolutely cleaned house and smashed the Ultraman swim course record. Everybody's seen you lead out of Ironmans a bunch of times. Who was Hallry Biscay before she was Ironman champion and Ultraman runner-up? Like what did you do growing up, and how did you get into triathlon?
Well, growing up, I think I was probably equally as nuts as I am now, but it was about swimming. I mean, I was a competitive swimmer growing up. I swam in college at USC and swam in the Olympic trials in 2000. And I was always, I think I'm obsessive by nature, and I was obsessed with swimming. I mean, when I was a high school student, I would be in class daydreaming about my split to the next swim meet, and I would be writing up my 50-meter splits for my next 200 breaststroke race, and doing the math and figuring out where I needed to take off a couple tenths to make my next goal time. That's what I did for free time, for fun, and in high school when everyone else would was out partying and going on dates. That's what I did. I trained and I dreamed about swimming. Yes, I know that's not normal, but that's how I was. So swam through college, and I was not good enough to become a professional swimmer. I had a very disappointing last couple of years of my swimming career, although I did have the privilege of going to the Olympic trials, and that was one of the greatest experiences of my career. I didn't perform there to the best of my ability because I struggled with performance anxiety and with a sport that everything comes down to tenths of a second, and it was this very sort of disconcerting thing in that I felt like I could put in all the work and all the yards, the 75,000 meters of swimming a week and all the hours staring at the black line, and I could bust out some great times in training, but I would get on the starting blocks and feel like I had no idea what was going to happen. And no matter whether I'd done the work or not, I may have a good race, I may not, but mostly I was thinking about how better not screw up that first turn, because if I do, the whole race is over. And so I would screw up the first turn because I was thinking about it. Which is why when I retired from swimming, I had to get a real job, and because I wasn't good enough to be a pro, got a real job and was looking for a way to stay fit. And I think that's how I got sucked into all of this long stuff, because very quickly I realized with triathlon that there was a much more direct correlation between the work that you put in and your results, because especially with the longer the races got, you could make a mistake. You could screw up the equivalent of your first turn or your start, and you could still have a good race, because at the end of the day, what came through and produced the results was your intestinal fortitude and the work that you put in. And that's really what got me hooked on Ironman.
Oh, cool. So, coming from a swimming background, you're obviously fast in the water. When you took up triathlon, did you race a bunch of short course and then into Ironman, or did you just race age group straight into Ironman, or what was the evolution of triathlon for you?
In theory, I was going to ease into it and do some sprints and do some Olympics, and maybe someday, a long time down the road, do an Ironman. But one of my problems is that I'm very impatient. And so my first season, I entered Wildflower, I think, in May, the Olympic distance, having never done one before. And somehow it seemed like a good idea in January of that year to do a 50-mile trail run. Mind you, I had just started running. But once I finished that, I'm like, well, I just ran for 9 hours and 40 minutes. Surely I can do all 3 sports for like 13, which is how long I figured it would take me to do an Ironman. So sure enough, in January of 2001, as an age grouper, before I'd ever done Olympic distance, I entered Ironman Florida for that year. Those were the good old days when you could enter Florida in January. Yeah, so there I was, and entered Ironman having not ever done Olympic. And once I did that, I was definitely hooked on Ironman, and as an age grouper, raced between 1 and 2 a year for the next few years.
1 and 2 a year, then 4, 6, 8.
Right.
So you did an ultra, a 50-mile ultra, before you even started triathlon. So last weekend? No, 2 weekends ago, it must have just, when you started in Hallry, must have been like, yeah, I've done this a bunch of times.
Well, I did have a bit of that confidence, but there were two sort of differentiating factors. One was that I have done a handful of 50-milers, but they've been on trail, and I had no idea how my legs would react to the pounding of 52 miles on asphalt. And that is really, it's a different can of worms.
I just can't even, sorry, I can't even imagine that. 52 miles.
Yeah.
When in Hawaii, when you do the race and turn around at Harvey, I think, wow, it's quite a way back to dinner. You had to run it anyway.
I know. So there was that, and then also just, the cumulative effect of the 2 previous days, and God knows, not getting enough or proper nutrition over those days, not getting enough sleep, and pounding the heck out of my legs, on the bike, and just of my body with the whole thing. So that was still a big question mark. That said, when the other girls took off at 7-minute pace starting the 52 miles, I did have enough sort of experience to know that does not make sense for me. Yeah. I need to let them go, because I do have a vague idea of what 50 miles feels like, and I know darn well that if I run that pace, I'm going to be crawling by mile 35. So I do think it helped me be able to enjoy that runner's high from miles 40 to 52, because I was able to sort of pace myself.
Cool. Now, we had a few people, I asked for questions for yourself on Twitter, and the number one question that came across was, what do you do for recovery? Because, like you say, you've had a reputation for racing a bunch of races, now Ultraman. What do you have anything that you specifically do that?
Yeah, my recovery strategy, my main strategy really is to keep moving. That said, after Ultraman, I have not done it. Derek forced me to take my first week of 0 exercise, nothing at all. That's the first time in my adult life, I think. So this was not an optimal recovery strategy, but it was the time at the end of the season that we had to take a break. When I am racing frequently in season, and I'm doing, for example, Hawaii, and then I've got Ultraman the next month, and that kind of thing, my number one strategy really is to keep moving, to get out the next morning, do a swim, do a little jog, I know just 20 minutes, a little spin, 30 minutes, but really to keep moving, flush all of the junk out of your body after the race, and that's huge. Second, after a big race like Ironman, I do make a concerted effort to eat a ton of food for about 48 hours, and I eat all the fun things that I don't usually let myself eat, but I really do believe that helps my recovery rate. So both of those things, and then of course, when you're racing that frequently, you simply cannot do a big taper for every event. It doesn't work, because you would never then be able to carry the fitness over to the following races. So I have to sort of sacrifice some of the